me the whole time. That was my father that started it. I hate when they think I started it and I've had plastic surgery or anything, but absolutely not. That was my father who started it 50 years ago, for those who are not from Boston. But I was very proud to have been asked to serve as MC for the conference when it was scheduled to be a live event. I love to be in person. Unfortunately, we couldn't do it live, but I'm still very pleased to open the conference today as well as tomorrow. For those of you who may not be as familiar with the dinner group as I am, we are men of color that come together periodically to network and support each other. For example, I was born in Boston, born and raised in Boston, Red Sox, Celtics, Patriots, Bruins, everything, right? But my father came over from Cuba as a Cuban exile and met my mother, who is an Ecuadorian immigrant. And now my daughter is Dominican. So we are as mixed of a family as there is here in Boston. But now the dinner, and I'm obviously proud member of the dinner group. The dinner group started here in Boston, and now we have affiliates in Atlanta, Charlotte, Providence, and more cities to come. So from all of us to all of you, welcome to the dinner group's second annual Men for Color Conference. First of all, a big muchas gracias, por favor, muchas gracias. Big thank you to our sponsors. Special recognition to our friends from John Hancock Financial, obviously Point 32 Health, which, as we all know, is Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, as well as Tufts Health Plan, Takeda Pharmaceutical, and Thermo Fisher Scientific for their lead sponsor role with the conference. Now, obviously, in the wake of George Floyd's murder and the aftermath, we here wanted to examine what we men, as men of color, are doing to advance our particular communities. Today, you will hear from men putting in great work on behalf of our community. But before we get to those panel discussions, please allow me to introduce one of the dinner group's leaders and founders, Emerson Foster, who will introduce today's very special guest, which will need really no introduction. Emerson just wants camera time because we all know who this speaker is, at least for many, many years. So hi, Emerson. Good morning. Buenos días. ¿Cómo estás?
Buenos días, Alberto. ¿Cómo estás, my brother? It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. And I am just excited to welcome and introduce our special guest this morning. You all have his bio. I won't read his bio, it's extensive. But Michael Eric Dyson is one of the nation's most renowned professors, gifted writers, earned a PhD in religion from Princeton University. He's taught at many of the nation's leading universities, a long stint at Georgetown and now at Vanderbilt University. So welcome, hearty welcome, Professor Michael Eric Dyson.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
Nice. So, you know, it's a pleasure to have you, obviously, and you know, you're with us at a time of certainly a reckoning in the country, and you know, certainly want to explore a number of different topics. But first, I guess I want to get into some of your literary works, and you know, your most recent book, A Long Time Coming, which came, you know, published a few months after the murder of George Floyd. I was wondering why it was so important for you to write that book, beyond the obvious. Just curious why it was so important for you to write that book.
Yes, sir. Well, it's extremely valuable, it seems to me, to be able to intervene on a conversation about race, to reckon with it in such a serious and fundamentally extraordinary fashion, that we have to be able to, you know, tell the truth about what we're going through in this nation. And for so long, we've lived in what Gore Vidal called the United States of amnesia. And I wanted to reject our citizenship in the United States of amnesia and claim citizenship in the kingdom of memory, and to be able to embrace and, you know, examine that history, that tattered, tortured, you know, history full of conflict and contradiction, and of course, promise and possibility. And then when George Floyd occurred, that is on May 25th, 2020, when Derek Chauvin put his knee on the neck of Mr. Floyd, who, despite his pleas that he couldn't breathe and his begging to be relieved from this onerous appointment with death that was being imposed on him by a cop full of sadistic disregard for his particular situation. It was an unavoidable metaphor for how we have to grapple in this nation with serious ways and means by which people of color, Black people in this case in particular, but Latino brothers and sisters, Asian brothers and sisters to a degree, and First Nation as well, but that people of color have had to grapple with this from the get-go. And Blackness has served, Blackness has served as a template for organizing the logic of democracy, reorganizing the agenda of American politics. And, you know, anti-Blackness has been pervasive in the culture, from microaggressions, you know, with interactions between white citizens trying to police the bodies and movement and mobility of Black people, to broader issues of enslavement and of Jim Crow, of segregation, of the refusal to acknowledge the humanity of Black people. So that reckoning meant that we couldn't just do it on the streets. And we know that masses of white brothers and sisters, among many others, along with Latinx and Asian and a lot of other people, poured into the streets. But it's one thing to march, it's another thing to deal with corporate structures. It's one thing to march, but what about media? It's one thing to march, but how do we begin to tackle the everyday forms of hurt and pain in housing, in distribution of resources, in political agendas? And think about what happened on January 6th. I'm sure we'll get into that as the revelation that the real religion in America, the real quest for politics, is about whiteness, of a particular variety of whiteness, and the refusal to acknowledge that there is something far more fundamental at stake here, our way of existence. And if we're talking about being the denizens of democracy, the defenders of democracy, that means that the narrow consideration for, you know, ethnicized politics has to give way to a broader consideration of American, you know, goodwill. And when you think about it, you know, here are people saying they were about Blue Lives Matter, as if they were going to juxtapose Blue Lives Matter to Black Lives Matter. We know that one is an ontological assertion early on in the morning for us to be talking about ontological. What the hell is that? Just a big word in philosophy talking about your being, the nature of your existence. So being Black is about the nature of your existence, Latino culture, identity, ethnicity. Blue Lives Matter you ain't born a policeman, homie. So how you gonna juxtapose Black Lives Matter to a job, person, profession, right? And so Blue Lives Matter from the get-go philosophically was challenged and was vulnerable to rebuff because it didn't assert the legitimacy of a comparison. It simply tried to parallel a job that a person has and an existence that people live through. And then, but we get to January 6th, where the Blue Lives Matter at? You dogging police, you dogging the cops, because your real source of support wasn't for cops, it's for whiteness. And the degree to which cops reinforce that whiteness, they are the handmaids of your particular ideology. So all that has come into play and within our purview to grapple with this racial reckoning. And so I wanted to talk about those issues and speak about the necessity of addressing those pressing problems in the democracy.
Thank you for that. You know, one of the another writer who was profiling your work, this book in particular, and he says, and I'll read it. It says, Dyson shows that justice, like funerals, is for the living, and that the dead are, quote, denied first their bodies, their being, then they are denied control over the social consequences of their non-being. Finally, they are denied the very challenges that only their deaths, the very changes, sorry, that only their deaths make possible. Speak on that.
Well, I mean, the reality is that the cult of Black death has been deeply inscribed in the collective American unconscious. Again, what the hell? What? I'm saying that the demand and the fetish for Black death is the premise of so much that occurs in our culture that we don't consciously examine. You know, when we look at these films of Black men and women and Latino men and women who are suffering at the hands of the police, these are snuff films. This is the pornography of Black death. And when Jesus said, let the dead take care of themselves, let the dead bury the dead, it looked like it was harsh. Like, dang, what are you, the baby? What are you, a rapper? You just disregarding, you know, Jesus, the human beings are there. Because what he was trying to say and what he understood is that in life, we are grappling with issues that demand our attention, sometimes that even lead to death, Black death, brown death, Asian death, indigenous death. And here we are. I guess I should have begun by even acknowledging a land acknowledgement. All of us on land, we ain't even tilled the soil. We didn't create the country. We didn't, you know, craft. Our blood helped create it. The people, the ancestors that we draw from, you know, help create this land, help till this soil, help make America what it is. And so many people ignore that. But Black death has been the demand, the fetish for Black death, the burial of Black bodies, right, has been the demand of a culture that feeds off of Black genius, but also exploits Black death. Eric Garner going down, Breonna Taylor going down, Ahmaud Arbery going down, Emmett Till going down, and on and on and on. Too many names to name, too many martyrs to conjure. So that what I'm arguing in part is that this is the pornography of Black death, the repetition of the ritual of Black demise through videos that show that no matter what Black people do, begging for, asking for, seeking relief from the misery imposed. You're stopping me for a left turn signal, and 3 minutes later, I'm dead. You know, down in South Carolina, a left turn signal. Brother Walter runs from his car thinking that they stopping him for child support because he ain't paid it. And the policeman fills his back with 7 pieces of lead and then throws down a taser to try to frame him, but it was caught on camera. What about the stuff that ain't caught on camera? If it's hard to convict somebody when it's caught on camera, imagine what ain't caught on camera, in camera, so to speak. So the point is that, yes, the demand for a certain kind of protocol of Black suffering, Black death, and the ways in which, you know, those of us who live must continually struggle, on the one hand, against the imposition of the ethic and etiquette of Black death, and on the other hand, from the retreat from Black death, you know, acknowledging it and the trauma that we confront, and thinking that the continued and repeated exposure to that trauma somehow is the problem itself, as opposed to the real thing to which the trauma points, right? Now, we don't want to be, you know, people talk about a fetish for Black death and the trauma porn. Yeah, that's one way to put it. But what about the people who had to confront it? They didn't have no choice, right? And if we can't even see what they had to go through, how can we honor and acknowledge the death that they suffered, right? And as a result of that, I just think we have to continually grapple with a kind of mournful attitude on the one hand, but a kind of resilience on the other that says we refuse to give in, we refuse to capitulate, we believe in resurrection and renaissance, we believe in rising like a phoenix from the ashes, but it's a constant struggle and battle in the culture. I don't even know if I answered your question, but I just
did. You did. I mean, it's the inhumanity that we're seeking. It's you know, it's always around the bend, but you can't see it. We get around the bend, it's not there, right? And by the way, for those of you that are joining us, we will have a Q&A, you know, about 30 minutes or so from now. So please put your question in the chat. But how do we gain that humanity, Professor Dyson? I mean, we've been working at this. We've been, to your point, asking, begging, pleading, and still, that humanity is not, reachable for Black and Brown in particular. How do we get there?
That's a great point. I mean, first of all, acknowledging that we are human would be a heck of a start. And yet, the recognition of our humanity is forever forestalled, is ever put off, is ever delayed. And you would think by now, my God, you love LeBron, you love Kobe, you love Jordan, you love Paul Pierce, you love Jason Tatum, you love Jaylen Brown. What is it about, but you don't see them as Black. It's like Spike Lee in the movie, Do the Right Thing, when he's arguing with the Italian, proprietor, well, his son of the pizza joint at which Spike Lee's character works. And he says, you always N-word this and N-word that. He said, who's your favorite baseball player? Who's your favorite basketball player? Who's your favorite? He said, oh yeah, but Michael Jordan, but they're not Black, right? Mm-hmm. So they get an exemption, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Jose Marti, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, maybe they're not the typical ones. They're not mm-hmm. like the rest of them, the Mexicans. They're not like the rest of the Cubanos, Cubano-American. They're not like the rest of them. They're exceptions. See, because the great stuff that Black people do, the great things that we do, makes us exceptional to the race. You ain't like the rest of them, you better than. But the quote bad things we do makes us representative of the race. That's what y'all do. Oh, so the thing is that the humanity of Black people, as well as many other people of color, is continually delayed in acknowledgement. You must be different. You must be better than the rest of your group, and therefore, like us, look at the arrogance, look at the hidden, narcissism of that the average white person has been led to believe in a racist culture with the logic of white supremacy, that their culture is definitive of what humanity is about. So that the collusion between and complicity between democracy and whiteness is the same thing, humanity and whiteness. Why can't you just be American? In other words, why can't you just be white like us? Right? And so, as the great philosopher Beyonce Giselle Knowles said, it has been said that racism is so American that when you challenge racism, it looks like you're challenging the nation or the legitimacy of American citizenship. And what she's saying is that, no, we're not going to collapse what it means to be American to what it means to be white. We can't do that. I mean, that's great. Y'all great, but y'all ain't the only thing. Y'all ain't the only game in town. And not only that, it's a narrow take on what that whiteness is about. So the humanity of Black people, the presumption that we are human, is not a deep and ancient ideal in the modern West. Right. It's a relatively new thought that we could be human, like for real. And so this is why we're constantly having arguments about the humanity of Black people. We're constantly trying to prove it again and again. That's why they hit us from within about respectability politics. We're trying to prove to folk who ain't got no business doubting us, because what is your humanity about? What has it been about? What has your culture done? Look at the carnage left in the wake of your experiment in democracy and your refusal to embrace its full range. Well, dadgum, how you judging somebody, right? But you sit in judgment on Black and brown peoples, on Asian brothers and sisters, on indigenous folk. You just sitting in judgment and denying our humanity. Even the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, as great as he was, jacked up too, talking about unreliable Black citizens and savage native peoples. Now, why were we unreliable? Because the British were offering us a hookup. Look, if y'all fight with us on the side of this war to establish America, we're gonna give you your freedom. Well, who wouldn't want to take that bargain? Why are you mad at us? You gonna keep me enslaved. The other side said they'll free me. Dog, I'm fighting with them.
Right.
What's up? I mean,
Right.
what, you don't get that? So the thing is, and the natives were savage because why? They were trying to demand their right to exist. 1857, Roger B. Taney, Supreme Court Chief Justice, said that Black people have no rights that white people are bound to respect. Damn, like none, like your persona non grata.
Right.
I think that was 1857. It wasn't 1896 Plessy versus Ferguson. I ain't no legal scholar, y'all, but you know the critical race theory. Oh, critical race theory. Yeah.
And I wanted you to, I definitely wanted
Right.
you to go there because, you know, what I love about you is you're so healed in obviously history and you can contextualize, you know, kind of where we are today based on where we've been. But you have these forces now that want to keep us in the dark, you know, and I just think about my, as an adult, what I've learned as an adult that I never knew coming up through school and college and all those things, and being really frustrated by that fact. And now we have forces that want to keep that hidden from my son, you know. So speak on this whole conundrum, or whatever you want to call it, around this critical race theory argument.
Yeah, man. It's like, I feel like Sammy Davis Jr. You're like, yeah, dude. Y'all don't even know who Sammy Davis. You young people don't even know Sammy. You know, go Google him, right? The Candyman can. Y'all don't even know. Y'all, I'm dropping it on y'all. Y'all don't even know. Mr. Bojangles.
Off the top, yeah.
Y'all don't know. Mr. Bojangles. Anyway, so you know, the thing is that they just saying stuff they don't even know what it means. You don't really. 2 years ago, folk couldn't even tell you what darn critical race theory was. They ain't know. They're trying to grapple with it, but they didn't understand what it was. Because, you know, a young white journalist reading over these books, trying to figure out ways to attack, you know, anti-racist theory and thought, saw the repeated mention of critical race theory and said, this is gonna work. This is how it's gonna work. We gonna hook this up. We gonna use this as a vehicle. It was evil genius, but we gonna use this as a vehicle that all of them agree with, that they have this agenda, critical race theory. First of all, critical race theory, you know, comes from your part of the country, up there at Harvard Law School. And Derek Bell, then later on, Kimberly Crenshaw, you know, Harvard Associated Law School professors or, you know, students generating theories about it ain't just your individual bias that's a problem, it's the systemic and structural inequities that prevail that are deeply and profoundly troubling. And so, you know, they said, you know, in their critical race theory, let's come up with a way of understanding society and the dominion of whiteness and the politics of power and the denial of humanity and equality and equity and freedom and justice and democracy and all the good stuff we claim to be about. That it's not simply about whether you call me the N-word or whether you're a spick or whether you call me another word, you know, that denigrates my ethnicity, you know, calling people wetbacks and stuff, you know, all of the evil, vicious, vile denunciation of people of color. It's also about school systems. It's about systems. Every word that ends in system is potentially problematic and troubling. Public education system, criminal justice system, prison system, right? Anything in and in system is problematic, vulnerable to the perpetuation of inequity. Look at the voting system we got in America and them trying to impose, them being right-wing conservatives and, you know, others who are invested in denying people of color the right to vote, the opportunity to exercise the franchise, and all the shenanigans and trickery that they are up to in order to you know, continue to put a foot on the neck, a knee on the neck of people to prevent progress. So critical race theory was a way of understanding those structural issues Ain't nobody teaching critical race theory in the 6th grade, dog. So stop with the madness. But, you know, we should be teaching about what race and racism are. We should be, you know, trying to intimate the humanity that is being squelched and squandered and the privileges that are being associated, being adapted and asserted. So, you know, yeah, it's a tough way to go, but that's because whiteness mucked the world up. And now whiteness don't want to clean the world up. Well, then you got to do it with others who are trying to help you clean the world up and who gonna tell you when you messing up and when you doing it the right way, or at least their particular viewpoints. And so now this anti-critical race theory stuff is a political machination born in a right-wing ideological test tube. It ain't no natural organic development. It is an artificial imposition of belief, sentiment, and passion in the name of preserving the outposts of white supremacy and white privilege. And these are tough ideas for white folk to have to confront and want to deal with. It's easier to talk about kumbaya and we shall overcome as opposed to what you're going to do about these issues. So when I hear people talking about critical race theory, a lot of them don't even know what they're talking about. They ain't read the work. They ain't read the authors. It's like talking about the Declaration of Independence, don't know who Thomas Jefferson is.
Sure.
Come on, dog. Sure. Now you can know what the words are and appreciate the ideas without knowing the author, but knowing the author makes it different, right? Like reading the Bible, don't know nothing about Jesus. Well, he is pretty central. You know, reading the Quran, never talking about Muhammad. I mean, come on, bruh. Reading the Tao Te Ching, reading Batman, don't know nothing about Robin, you know, or Catwoman, I don't know. So the thing is that we have to be conversant with the ideas and the manipulation of those ideas for either the edification of the American public and trying to help us understand what's going on, or to really reinforce pre-existing conditions of bigotry that have to be pointed out because they're part of the virus of white supremacy in this nation.
You know, we as a populace, are we just lazy? You know, are we not conversant enough on some of these topics are we not investing the time to get a full accounting of you know, these arguments, these specious arguments, as you'll call them, right? And to really kind of delve through kind of what are we really trying to address here? And you know, I heard you a few weeks ago on CNN breaking down the voter ID laws in Texas and the disenfranchisement of Black folks, which is pretty clear to me. And I'd like you to speak on that just as an example of if we would just invest more time in gaining some knowledge on what is really trying to be done here, maybe it'll all come into view in a much clearer way.
Right. Well, there's no doubt that, you know, we can be lazy. Look, Richard Hofstadter wrote a book, 1963, Anti-Intellectualism in America. I mean, it ain't started with Snoop Dogg, right? He wasn't talking about no dang rappers. He's talking about people who were choosing, you know, Dwight Eisenhower over Adlai Stevenson, and the ways in which they had refused to come to grips with, you know, the anti-critical sentiments, the anti-scientific beliefs, because we talking about anti-Blackness, we talking about anti-science, we talking, right? That's why people, you know, in terms of the vaccines and stuff, I'm sure we'll get to that. Black people, come on now. People of color, come on now. You know, it was different when we talking about withholding medicine, as in Tuskegee. Now they're trying to give you something and you're like, I don't trust it and stuff. Look, what kind of weed you smoking? Do you know what? I mean, I'm sure nobody on this call has ever smoked weed, but let's just say you got a friend that smoked weed. You don't even know what they lacing that weed with, dog. The girl you trying to holler at, you don't, no, don't even let me go there. So my point is, stop it. Stop it, bruh. You know what time it is. You know, you trying to be science, you know, Kyrie Irving, I love you. How you trying to be a scientist? You're a damn basketball player, and you can't even play that. You ain't even play that, and you one of the coldest people, you know, they said pound for pound, you might be the most skilled player ever to play. Now, I don't know, I think Kobe Bryant got something to say about that. Maybe Kevin Durant, but you certainly up there. You got some of the coldest skills, and I'm contemplating the cosmological construct. I don't want to clown him because I love Kyrie Irving and I respect his intelligence and sensitivity. So I'm not trying to come out of no toxic masculinity bag, but god dang, bruh. What you got a Google doctor? Well, who are you consulting? It's millions of billions of people that took the vaccine. Right, well, I don't know. It's millions of people that took the vaccine. They doing all right. You know, ain't been no reported, couple things, but statistically, come on. They much higher than your 3-point shot. They're much higher than you shooting from the rim. From the baseline. The percentages are crazy. Yeah. Right. If you had those percentages when you were playing basketball, bruh, you'd be a champ. You make Bill Russell look like he ain't won nothing. Right. So the point is, yes, laziness, intellectual laziness when it comes to race and white brothers and sisters ain't asking no questions about the stuff that's being spoon-fed to them. People going to, I don't want my child to be subject to critical race theory, so stop it. Please, ma'am, you don't even know what you're talking about. Do the work, study, read a book, read a book, please. If you can't read a book, read an article, a long one, please. If you can't do that, at least read a column, please, 800 words. Think, reflect. Now, it doesn't mean automatically that you're going to agree with what I'm talking about, but at least be critical, at least appreciate science. I don't worship at the altar of science, but dadgummit, it is critical to alleviate some of the tax of ignorance that is imposed on us. So yeah, we are lazy. We don't want to think. We don't want to challenge ourselves. We repeat conspiracy theories. We're complicit with the worst forms of lethal ignorance. So on both sides, it's kind of jacked up. But yes, to answer your question, we do be lazy.
Nice. So I'm gonna pivot a little bit, or pivot real quick. Another one of your books, you wrote a book, and you and I share a love of an art form. It is an art form. You wrote a book called Born to Use Mics. By I think, my favorite artist and probably yours as well. And you brought other literaries to the table to help to examine Nas's seminal work, Illmatic, and so you wrote a chapter in that book, your book, but had a chapter on one of Nas' song, One Love. And the name of the chapter was One Love, Two Brothers, and 3 Verses.
Right.
Speak on that.
Yes, sir. Nasty Nas, Nasir Jones, one of the most gifted MCs we've ever seen. He's writing at 16. Verbal assassin, my architect pleases. When I was 12, I went to hell for snuffing Jesus. What is this? So gifted dude. And then he comes out with his debut album, Illmatic. Like, what does that even mean? What the hell? What? Well, it's just words, just invented, because this is what hip hop at its best does, just invents a new language and vocabulary to articulate belief and idea and commitment and racial reckoning, right? So, I took one of those songs, we looked at every song on that album, different people and different scholars. And I took One Love because my late brother, God rest his soul and bless his memory, who died after spending 30 years in prison, was imprisoned. And, having listened to the album, it's only right that I was born to use mics, and the stuff that I write is even tougher than dice. I'm taking rapping to a new plateau through rap slow. My rhyming is a vitamin held without a capsule. A smooth criminal on beat breaks. Never put me in your box if your ish eats tapes. Y'all don't even know what a tape is. I know y'all don't know. Y'all got downloading and streaming. Dadgummit, we had to put the damn tape in the box and rewind it. You don't know what that is. Y'all, I know you don't know what the darn 8-track is. In the ride in the 70s, digging in the scene with a gangster lean. Ooh, y'all don't know that. You may not have. I'm killing y'all with this. A car at all, but be thankful for what you got. So we putting the 8-track in, and that's the tape all jacked up and in that little big old thing. It looks like a fossil now. It looks like something that belongs in the museum. But the 8-track was the joint. So we sticking the 8-track in, and it's, you know, around the spools of tape and everything. So, you know, that's what Nas was speaking about, the nostalgia, but also the politics of Black culture, of race and identity. And so on that song, you know, he's writing letters to and receiving letters from people who are imprisoned. And my brother was imprisoned. And I was, you know, and I've written a letter, you know, to him in public and received letters from him. And then we were interviewed on CNN with Soledad O'Brien in terms of being Black in America, as the documentary was so named. And, you know, we were public about our struggles, like John Edgar Wyman and his brother. One is a writer, one, you know, was a prisoner. I was teaching then at Penn, University of Pennsylvania, and my brother is in the Penn, the Stone Hotel. And so we talked about, and I discussed in that essay, the contradictions of what that meant, but not to elevate me as being the example and him as being the bête noire and the horrible, you know, symptom of what's wrong, even though he owned up to his own mistakes, excuse me, as a drug dealer in America who changed his ways, was not guilty of the crime for which he was convicted, second-degree murder. At least we believe that. And not because he's my brother, but because of the lack of evidence. But anyway, so that song afforded me the opportunity to write about my brother, to talk about the pain of his incarceration, going to visit him, seeing him locked up, seeing him change his mind and his spirit and redirecting his life to something more edifying and positive. All that stuff is in, you know, Nas's song. And I wanted to write about that and write about that song because it permitted me the ability to reflect on, you know, that, you know, one love, two brothers, three verses, you know, and because it was a song called One Love. It had, you know, the two brothers, me and Everett, that's his name, Everett Dyson Bay, and then the three verses that composed that song, and to allow me to talk about the theory of you know, Black existence, the presumptions and the folkways and mores that shape the lives of young Black people in the hood, and, you know, what prison had done to us, what incarceration is doing to us, and what we can do as a people to try to grapple with these existential dilemmas into which we were thrust.
You know, the music, and I'm just you know, at my advanced age, I'm probably a bigger fan of music now than I ever was, and you know, I'm stuck in the true school era still, you know. And one of the things I thought about last year, and you know, after Brother Floyd, you know, I kept on asking, like, where's the revolution in the music? You know, I go back to the Public Enemies and the KRSs and you know, the 80s, late 80s, really, you know, putting our angst, you know, our desires, our wants, our you know, requirements, if you will, on wax, right? And the tape. In this past year, my ear's not to the street, certainly, but this past year, I didn't hear, you know, by the time I get to Arizona, I didn't hear one of those songs. So, you know, what's happening in popular culture? Are we still, you know, are artists able to carry some of these messages forward? Can they be the standard bearers for the challenges that we're having as a community, and really help to, you know, elevate the voice of the voiceless? Can we still do that, or is that ship sailed?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's a great point. You know, it is undeniable that we were living through a rich period, what you call true school, some people call old school, some people call it the golden era of hip hop, from, you know, the late 80s to the mid 90s, you know, mid to late 90s, like that particular power. You know, Elvis was a hero to most, but he never meant to me. Straight up racist, the sucker was simple and plain. Okay, man, John Wayne, already I'm hyped because I'm mad. Most of my heroes don't appear on no stamp. Sample and look back and you see nothing but rednecks and racists for 400 years. Don't worry, be happy was a #1 jam. You can slap me right now if I say it again, right? So, wow. And then, you know, that song, Fight the Power, was named, I think, I stand to be corrected, Rolling Stone named it one of the top 5 songs of all time. It might have been #2. I'm not sure, but I think it was top 5. Somebody can, you know, Google that while we're on here and see. Because Aretha's Respect was #1. I'm thinking Fight the Power might have been #2, at least top 5, which is deep, which is profound. That wasn't happening when Fight the Power was out, though. Let's be real now. Now, you know, I'm a little bit older than you. Okay, a lot. And the thing is that I remember fighting people when they were dogging Public Enemy. That crap, turn it off. It's not like they were making distinctions between Public Enemy and, you know, F the police coming straight from the underground. A young brother got it bad because I'm brown and not the other color. So police think they have the authority to kill a minority. Blank that because I ain't the one for a punk blank with the badge and the gun to be beaten on and thrown in jail. We can go toe to toe in the middle of a cell. So, you know, they were like, you know, C. Dolores Tucker was cut that stuff off. William Bennett, it's horrible. You know, turn it off. Now you're nostalgic for something you rejected when it was here, right? I'm talking about the critics of it, right? The internal culture always knew. You always knew, other people knew. But the critics from without couldn't make distinctions between genres and varieties of hip hop. So that during that, you know, period when Lauryn Hill, I think that same year that Jay came out, the Fugees came out, Lauryn Hill said, even after all my logic and my theory, I add a MF so you ignorant hear me. Right? That's consciousness and understanding. You got to manipulate certain things. We've got Common, but who's buying Common, right? And Common is one of the most successful rappers of all time, certainly one of the most gifted lyricists we've ever produced. But he ain't selling what, you know, some of the other stuff, but even the political rap back then. But it was a trend. What we can't forget is that it was trendy to do political rap. And from the East, my brother, to the East. Y'all don't know nothing about that. You know, Lakeem Shabazz, being a black man, that neo-African renaissance, that neo-nationalist upsurgence. You know, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, Fight the Power by Public Enemy, talking about Malcolm X's rebirth, speaking about Black nationalist politics and ideologies and Up You Mighty Race with Marcus Garvey. That was all politically popular, or at least aesthetically popular, in a generation that was trying to reclaim some of its lost idols. And so, yeah, there was a difference to be sure, but you can find it now, but it's so much of the choices. The option glut is crazy. It's like the difference between watching TV when I was a kid. They had 3 stations. I know that's tripping y'all out. What? No, stop. Yeah, for real. And maybe if you had UHF, it was 4, right? UHF, you turn to channel 56, but ABC, NBC, and CBS. I know y'all tripping right now. He must be doing mushrooms. I know. He said there were only 3 stations. Mother, is that true? Yeah, it's true, right? And you knew the TV was going off. How did you know? Dun, 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 dun. Man, right. You knew the national anthem was going. Y'all better be glad Colin Kaepernick wasn't around then. He'd have canceled it on all 3 stations. It would have been a wrap. Okay. Anyway. So the thing is that it's like telling people the difference between TV then and right now, Netflix and Hulu. We ain't know nothing about that. We ain't no cable. Then you got cable. Then you got all these stations. You got literally thousands of stations, satellite dishes versus 3. So now the option glut, streaming, Y'all can choose what music. When an artist makes an album, you had that physical album. If you were going to skip over the song, you had to go there to that damn record player and lift up that needle and move it over. You had to do work to skip what I was doing on my record, homeboy. I want you to listen to the whole thing. The very thought of you makes my heartstrings move, right? You're going to listen to John Coltrane, and my man, you're going to have to listen to the song and pick it up. And then you say, well, I'm too late. I won't. Like with the remote control, I got to go turn the TV with the pliers, with the rabbit ears, with the foil on them. That's different. So my point is, yeah, there's still politics going on. Little Baby made a protest song. Her, I Can't Breathe, Common. So if you look at it, a bunch, but it's lost amidst the plethora of offerings. Or even those who are not known for politics are slipping it in because they understood, right? I dumbed down my lyrics to double my dollars. People criticize, but they still say holla. Truthfully, I like to be, if skill soul, I like to rap like Talib Kweli. I like to rap like Common Sense, but I sold 5 mil. I ain't rap like Common Sense. Said, I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. So I got rich and gave back. That's the win-win. Now you ain't got to buy that, but that's at least the logic of my man, Jay.
No doubt.
And I mangled some of those lyrics, but look at what he also said. Bin Laden been happening in Manhattan. Back then, back when the police was Al-Qaeda to black men. Oh, so I'm slipping that in. After you listen, when the rim is in the system, ain't no telling, will I love them, will I diss them? That's what they be yelling. That's Biggie, interpolated by Jay, right? On I'm a Hustler, baby. So while he's doing that, he's doing serious politics, slipping them in. Kanye, while he's doing what he's doing, which is a lot, right? Them first 5 albums, though, classics, he's talking about being part of the civil rights movement, mama taking them to marches and so on. So it's more colorful, it's more varied. The option glut is so large, but technically it's expanded the range of consciousness raising songs, but they're more indistinct because the landscape is so glutted with options that it's hard to point them out. So, but still, having said that, it's a different moment in time to be sure.
No doubt. We're probably about 8 minutes till the end of the session, and this has been tremendous as I knew it would be. I do have one question in the chat, and it's from our group, and as you know, Professor, our group is really about bringing men of color together to connect and network with each other and build a community that would benefit each other. One of the things that we're really trying to drive forward, we have a lot of, Black brothers that are part of our group. Our Latino brothers are here with us as well, but we're trying to increase, that Latino population and connectivity. And I'm curious what you're seeing. I mean, as a community, Black and Latino community, are we connected? Are we walking forward in a connected way, in one voice where we can, to support each other and support the concerns of that frankly touch both of our communities?
Yes, sir. It's look, on the one hand, we have tremendous, connections between our communities that ought to be acknowledged and nurtured and remembered, and at the same time, we've had disparate routes and paths of struggle. So, when we think about the issues that bring us together in solidarity, workers' rights, racism against people of color, lynching, and certain, Mexicans were being lynched too, not to the same degree and the same numbers, but certainly there, and certainly hate being directed against Latinos in this country. And then there were tensions among and between, our groups and communities. Because what does it mean to be a non-white Hispanic? Ain't no such thing as a non-black person, white black person, right? So that Latinx identity is a creative and curious combination of both ethnicity and race and the ways in which multiple ethnicities within the grouping, right? It's one thing to be a Dominican from, Harlem, or at least certain parts, and, a Cuban from Miami, both speaking Spanish, but damn, it's a different way of looking at the world, man. And, when you think about the varieties, say Colombia, when you think about what's going on within Hispaniola, Latino, the names associated with some Latino brothers and sisters dig Latinx, some don't, some rock with Hispanic, some don't, right? Just like Black people, some people like Black, some people like African-American, we were called Negro and colored. It's the constant evolution of consciousness, the grappling with political labels assigned to us that unite us in solidarity. But when it comes to even, fighting about, say, the status of Cuba and embracing the revolution on the one hand of Fidel Castro, who met Malcolm X in Harlem and was seen as a noble defender of the revolution at the Hotel St. Teresa and the like. And then on the other hand, with many Cuban brothers and sisters thinking, well, damn, we fighting for the ability to be free and to breathe the air of freedom. Can my mama watch me play baseball? Do I have to leave Cuba in order to go somewhere else? So while you celebrating the revolutionary ideas of Fidel, there ain't nobody rotating off, they dictators too, right? So that's complicated. That's complicated, right? On either side. And so having been to Cuba myself, and when you see the Malecon, or you go to Santiago de Cuba, right, and the differences, Black Cubans versus white Cubans there, that is not articulated because the claim is made there ain't no racism there, but all the light-skinned people up front, all the dark-skinned people in the back. Same when you go to Brazil, and even among African-American people, looking at you, my brother, look at you, tall, dark, and handsome, looking 20 years younger than you are. And the way in which my father, who was blue-black, right, dark-skinned, as we would say. And I saw the vicious mistreatment of him as a dark-skinned Black man. That's just within Black America. I ain't even talking about what white folk did to him, right? If Elian Gonzalez had been a darker skinned, Latino, would he have been given a Snickers bar and told him to take his butt home, right? So the varieties, right? Puerto Rico, the Big Island, Small Island, what you doing in New York, you New Yorican, look at the varieties of identities. Fat Joe, Big Pun, participating in hip hop, the Latino roots often obscured. So there are ways in which, Black Panthers, Brown Panthers. So there's a lot going on. That's just among Latinos and Black people. We talk about Asian brothers and sisters. We can speak about indigenous folk and the struggles we've had and endured as people of color have been revealing to be certain. So yeah, it's a hell of a journey. There are tensions, there are conflicts. And when you think about Cesar Chavez, as I've talked about already, with the migrant workers and farm rights, and the way in which he and Dr. King were joining together, were speaking notably and admiringly of each other and uplifting our common struggles. There are many ways in which we have not yet tested the durable bonds that bring us together. Now, there are real tensions. New York, LA, you got to have enough people in tension to have real conflict, right? Because there's contest over real resources. And when Latinos became the largest, minority in America, that shifted the game too, right? And then America with its, monoculture, monolinguistic obsession, Latinos at the very least speaking 2 languages, or Nigerians speaking 5 languages, and Latinos speaking 7 languages. Everybody but America, because they live in a real world where you got to have multiple languages. What you speak? American? Yep, I speak American. Yep, how you doing there, Bob? Hey, what's up? What's going on? What is the multilinguistic feature of our humanity and culture that allows us to engage people, because we are not so arrogant to think that everybody ought to speak our language. But when you live in a dominant first world colonial power, that's what you think. And so all those things are there, begging for us to come together, ways in which we fight. You think about Latino and Black gangs at war. You think about what's going on in California with argument over resources and what languages should be deployed and so on and so forth. The xenophobia that comes up, the hatred of the other, the foreign born person. But then when we think about people who are foreigners and migrants, we forget the fact that a lot of them come who are here who are Black as well, not just Latin, not just from Central and South America, you know, but also from parts of the Caribbean and Africa and the like. So yeah, there's a lot more in common that we ought to exploit and think about as we forge connections to try to make this a better world.
Man, that's powerful. And as I knew, this would be a very, very short hour. And, you know, I just want to thank you for your insight and thoughtfulness, and you leaving us with some things, hopefully, for all of us to noodle on as we kind of go about our everyday life. You know, it would have been a pleasure to have you in person. We will at some point. You'll be back with us, and you know, we'll maybe have a longer session for you to share your wisdom. But thank you. And for all you that have joined, you know, we have a full day of programming. As you know, coming up, we have a bunch of men of color who are doing great things in the community that we want to spotlight. And so join us on our next panel discussion, would be our economic development panel, to really talk about brothers who are really moving the needle around, you know, bringing equity to our communities. Again, Professor Dyson, thank you. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity to talk with you, to chat with you, to engage in a very serious high-level conversation and relive some of my youth at the same time. Thank you, sir.